Bill Gates is reportedly furious. Samsung Electronics, the world's largest consumer electronics manufacturer, the company that builds the chips, the screens, and the devices that run Microsoft's entire ecosystem, has banned Microsoft Copilot. Not restricted, not placed under review, banned, company-wide, across every device, every network, every workstation in Samsung's global operations. This is not a consumer complaint. This is not a software review. This is the world's most powerful hardware company looking at the product Microsoft spent $30 billion building and deciding it was too dangerous to allow inside their own walls. And Samsung is not alone, because in the months that followed, the pattern repeated across boardrooms at Apple, at major financial institutions, at enterprise IT departments that collectively manage hundreds of millions of Windows licenses. The companies who know technology best, who employ the security engineers, the data architects, the infrastructure teams who understand exactly how these systems work, looked at Copilot and said, no. In this investigation, we're going to expose 3 things Microsoft needs you to believe are not true. The recall data. Harvesting scheme so invasive that regulators in the UK opened a formal investigation within weeks of its announcement. The $30 per user per month extraction model that enterprise customers are refusing at a rate that forced Microsoft to publicly walk back its own sales strategy. And the coordinated wave of corporate bans that started with a data breach at Samsung and has never stopped spreading. This is not a story about whether Copilot works. It is a story about what Copilot is actually designed to do. And the answer to that question is why the smartest technology companies in the world are locking it out. To understand what Samsung found, you have to understand what Microsoft's AI tools actually require to function. Copilot is not software that runs on your machine. It is a window. Everything you show it, every document you ask it to summarize, every email you ask it to draft, every line of code you ask it to explain, travels to Microsoft's servers, gets processed by Microsoft's AI infrastructure, and returns to you as an answer. The conversation happens on Microsoft's hardware, not yours. For 30 years, Samsung was one of Microsoft's most important partners. Samsung laptops run Windows. Samsung Galaxy devices sync with Microsoft accounts. Samsung chips and displays power the machines that Microsoft's operating system depends on. This is a relationship worth billions annually in both directions. That relationship changed in May 2023. Samsung engineers, working under deadline pressure, uploaded proprietary source code to an external AI tool to get debugging assistance. The code left Samsung's network. It reached an external server. It could not be retrieved. It could not be deleted. Samsung's legal and security teams had to treat it as a confirmed data breach, because that is exactly what it was. Read that again. Engineers at the world's largest consumer electronics company, using AI tools the way they were designed to be used, accidentally transmitted proprietary intellectual property to a server they did not control and could not recover it from. The tool worked exactly as advertised. That was the problem. Samsung issued an internal ban on generative AI tools across the company within weeks of the incident. Microsoft Copilot was on the banned list. ChatGPT was on the banned list. Any AI tool that processed company data on external servers was locked out. Samsung's security team had looked at the architecture, the fundamental design of how these tools work, and concluded it was incompatible with operating a company that has intellectual property worth protecting. Then Samsung announced it was building its own internal AI, Samsung Gauss, on premises, under Samsung's control, on Samsung servers, with Samsung's security team holding the keys. This is the part Microsoft cannot explain away. Samsung did not ban Copilot because it did not work. Samsung banned Copilot because it worked exactly as designed, and the design was the problem. Microsoft built a product that requires your data to flow through Microsoft's infrastructure. Samsung, a company with more technical expertise than most governments, decided that was an unacceptable arrangement. the world's largest consumer electronics manufacturer looked at the $30 billion AI bet and decided to build an alternative rather than pay Microsoft's toll. Microsoft cannot undo that decision. Samsung is not returning to Copilot. The ban is policy. But the hardware manufacturer's rejection was only the opening move. At almost exactly the same time, in a different boardroom in Cupertino, a company worth $3 trillion was reaching the same conclusion, for the same architectural reason. Apple does not usually explain its decisions. The Wall Street Journal reported in early 2023 that Apple had restricted employee use of ChatGPT and external AI coding assistants on company systems. The stated reason was data security, specifically the risk of proprietary information being transmitted to external servers and retained by third-party AI systems. The restriction covered Microsoft Copilot. It covered any AI tool that required company data to leave Apple's controlled environment. What makes this significant is not that Apple restricted an external tool. What makes it significant is what Apple was building while it issued those restrictions. Apple Intelligence, announced at WWDC 2024, was built around a single architectural principle that Microsoft's entire AI strategy contradicts: on-device processing. Apple Intelligence runs on the device. Your data does not leave your machine to power the AI. The model runs local. Microsoft chose the opposite architecture. Copilot requires cloud connectivity. The AI runs on Microsoft servers. Your documents, your prompts, your queries travel to an external system, get processed, and return. The user pays $30 a month and also, in a very real sense, provides the training data. Apple saw that architecture and chose not to build it. When Tim Cook introduced Apple Intelligence at WWDC 2024, he did not have to name Microsoft. The contrast was visible in every design choice: on-device versus cloud-dependent; privacy, by architecture versus privacy as a settings toggle; keeping your data on your hardware versus sending your data through someone else's infrastructure to get an answer. Two of the most valuable technology companies in the world evaluated Microsoft's core AI premise, and both said no. One said it in a public ban, one said it in a design philosophy. The verdict was the same. And then Microsoft showed everyone who was paying attention exactly why Samsung and Apple had been right to be concerned. In May 2024, at its annual Build Developer Conference, Microsoft unveiled the feature that was supposed to silence every critic of Windows 11 and validate every dollar of Copilot investment. They called it Recall. Here is what Recall does. Every few seconds, it takes a screenshot of everything on your screen. Every document, every email, every website, every message, every image. It indexes all of it, runs AI analysis across it, and builds a searchable database of your entire computing history. Microsoft called this giving your PC a photographic memory. For 30 years, what happened on your computer stayed on your computer, unless you chose to share it. That era ended with a single product announcement in May 2024. Security researcher Kevin Beaumont examined the implementation within days of the announcement. Recall's database, the complete indexed history of everything you had ever done on your computer, was stored in a plain, unencrypted SQLite file on the device. Not encrypted at rest, not protected beyond the initial login. It sat in a standard file location that any piece of malware, any attacker with temporary physical access, any malicious application with local file access could copy in its entirety. This was not a theoretical vulnerability. This was a single file containing your banking information, your medical records, your legal documents, your private messages, your company's confidential data, and it was unencrypted. The UK Information Commissioner's Office opened a formal inquiry into Recall within weeks of the announcement. This is not a theory. This is a regulatory investigation by a National Data Protection Authority into whether a default Windows feature violated data protection law before it had even shipped. Microsoft delayed the launch, then delayed it again, then announced Recall would be opt-in rather than enabled by default, a fundamental reversal of its original design intent, then delayed it again, a feature Microsoft's own CEO personally described as the defining capability of the next generation of Windows computing, went through 4 separate delays and required a complete architectural redesign because security researchers, privacy regulators, and the company's own internal review concluded it could not ship in the form Microsoft had announced. This was the flagship. This was the product that was supposed to make the Copilot hardware mandates feel worth it. The reason to buy a new machine. The reason to accept the higher price point of a Copilot Plus PC. It is now a delayed, opt-in, reduced scope feature that Microsoft has quietly stopped mentioning in its hardware marketing. If the best demonstration of what Copilot can do required regulators in 2 countries to intervene before it could ship, you are not dealing with a productivity tool. You are dealing with a surveillance system that got caught before it could deploy at scale. And while Microsoft was managing that crisis, the enterprise customers who were supposed to be paying $30 a month for Copilot were running their own calculations and walking away. Microsoft's plan was straightforward. Every company already paying for Microsoft 365 would upgrade to Copilot for an additional $30 per user per month. These are captive customers. They run on Exchange, they live in Teams, their documents are in SharePoint. Adding $30 per seat to sell them, AI features built on the productivity suite they already use, should have been the easiest upsell in enterprise software history. It has not worked the way Microsoft needed it to. Analyst firms throughout 2024 documented the same pattern across the enterprise technology market. Copilot pilots were running. Copilot renewals at full deployment scale were not following. The cost barrier, on top of existing Microsoft 365 licenses that were already rising, was cited by the majority of enterprise IT decision makers as the reason full deployment was not being approved. The $30 price point assumes every employee generates $30 of monthly productivity value from Copilot. Most enterprises running honest assessments found that Copilot delivered demonstrable value for specific roles, but generated minimal benefit for the majority of their workforce. Company-wide deployment at $30 per seat was a business case that required productivity improvements that most pilots could not document at the required scale. In early 2024, Microsoft removed the 300-seat minimum purchase requirement for Copilot. When a software vendor selling an enterprise product eliminates the minimum commitment threshold, it is not a confidence signal. It is an admission that the original sales motion was not generating the conversion rates the company needed. Goldman Sachs published a report in 2024 questioning whether the technology sector's accumulated AI capital expenditure would generate proportionate revenue returns. The question Goldman Sachs analysts were asking in print for their institutional clients was effectively, where is the return on $30 billion of AI infrastructure investment if the customers who were supposed to pay for it are running limited pilots instead of full deployments? Microsoft removed the Copilot sidebar from Windows 11 in late 2024. The feature that was positioned as the defining interface innovation of the post-GPT era was quietly replaced with a reduced functionality web app. The dedicated Copilot keyboard key, announced in January 2024 as the first new key added to the PC keyboard in 30 years, began disappearing from hardware configurations within the same calendar year it launched. When a company eliminates minimum purchase requirements, redesigns its flagship feature from scratch under regulatory pressure, reverses its keyboard hardware strategy within 12 months, and watches Goldman Sachs ask its institutional clients whether the underlying business model generates returns, you are not watching a product find its footing. You are watching a $30 billion bet that did not land. So what does this mean for you? It means the narrative Microsoft has been selling, that AI makes Windows more valuable, that Copilot justifies the hardware upgrade cycle, that the surveillance architecture is actually a productivity feature, has been rejected by the same companies that employ the engineers who built the internet. Samsung's security team said no. Apple's architecture team said no. Enterprise IT departments, running honest return on investment analyses, are saying no, at a rate that forced Microsoft to redesign its own product and revise its sales model within 12 months of launch. Here's what the smart money is already doing. If your Windows 11 machine has Copilot features active, go into your privacy settings today and audit what data sharing you have consented to. If recall is enabled on a Copilot Plus PC, turn it off. Not because you have something to hide. Data that exists in an unencrypted database has been breached before, and it will be breached again. If you are evaluating Copilot for your business, demand documented productivity metrics from the pilot before signing a company-wide renewal. Vendors who cannot show you the numbers are hoping you rely on the marketing instead. If you are ready to leave the platform entirely, start with Ubuntu, Linux Mint, and Zorin OS. They run on the hardware you already own. They do not send your activity to external servers. They do not screenshot your screen every few seconds. They do not require a Microsoft account to use your own computer. They are free. Samsung already made this decision. Apple made it architecturally. Your IT department is running the same calculation right now. Stop letting them call surveillance a feature. Stop paying for a machine that is working for them. The exit is already open, and the companies that understand technology best walked through it first. If you want to know which hardware manufacturers are building the Copilot free alternative right now, watch this next.